All right, so today we're working on a 2006 Honda Element. This customer is complaining about a popping noise going over bumps and braking. So with the inspection, what we find is the front portion of this lower control arm, this bushing here, is we can see the metal where the actual joint has gone. So this whole arm is popping up and down, making that noise. So this is a pretty simple job per se. It's two mounting bolts up here on your control arm mounting bushings, and then you have your ball joint down here. One other would be the link pin for the sway bar. That's going to be our biggest problem with this one. We've already hit it with PB Blaster. It is pretty rusty. Yeah, that would be unfortunate if we can't get that bolt off, because it would require a link pin to be put in. So we're gonna see if we can work with it with PB Blaster. So we'll go ahead and we're actually gonna start with that first. It is a good place to start, being you don't want to loosen anything else up. You know, that's the only real piece holding it on to the other parts of the suspension. So we'll go ahead and work on that now. All right, so this is what we want to remove. So we have this bolt, has an Allen head, so we have to hold it still while we loosen the nut. So we'll go ahead and so what happens is it starts to get pretty tight, and I think it's just mostly because of the rust and all the grime building back up. So we'll loosen it a little bit and then retighten it a little bit. So now we have ran the nut so far out, we're bound up, and we cannot free it up by tightening it. So well, we probably shouldn't have got so aggressive. What we're going to do now is I've kind of got everything angled. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use a die grinder or cut-off wheel, and I'm going to give one cut down the side here, and then I'll rotate it to the other side like 180 degrees from our first cut, and I'll do another cut. So hopefully we add a lot of heat to the joint and we give it some expansion so we can get it past that. And then all we'll have to do is hunt down a new nut for this spot. So we'll go ahead and try to get this. Yeah. Still pretty tight. We'll go ahead and do some more cutting. I try to make baby steps cutting so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. we're gonna finish this diagonal cut. I think we need to get some of this backside, trying to avoid, you know, as much damage. Although, I mean, we are replacing this control arm, so really, why am I worried about that? But I'm just trying to be as careful as I can to the parts we want to keep. But we got it, and I don't think we did any real damage. Looks like we just barely grazed the threads right there, but that should be pretty good. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the lower ball joint. Now the lower ball joint has a cotter pin on it, so we'll go ahead and remove this cotter pin. This is the locking, so it doesn't loosen up on you. We're going to reinstall all this stuff, so just put it aside. We'll go ahead and impact that out. This lower bolt here, it's a 17 millimeter on this one, so we'll go ahead and we'll loosen that up. All right, so there's a couple ways we can do a ball joint. You know, we can put a pickle fork in there. If we put a pickle fork in, we're definitely going to ruin this lower ball joint. We're going to split the boot. It's already split. Not too bad, but it is. So that's one way. That's the most universal way. Honda makes a tool that comes in here and clamps and presses up on the ball joint stud, and that pops it out of joint. But that's a Honda specialty tool. What we're going to do is we're going to use a mallet, a little 5-pound sledgehammer. We're going to try to hit the lower control arm on either side, one here, one here. We'll probably hit it a couple times on each side. That'll give this joint, it's a tapered joint. So the ball joint's tapered going into a tapered hole. So what we're going to do is give it enough shock to free it up and just to break that hold, because it's not held in. All right, so we got that side. All right, so now we're going to go, we have 2 more bolts. One here straight up. One on this back joint that goes in. We're going to use an extension with a swivel to get that one. All right, and these are 19 millimeters. So we have a little swivel for the impact. All right, so now we're pretty free. We'll go ahead and get that off. It's a matter of just wiggling it out. All right. Now that we have our 2 control arms, we got this control arm from Auto Parts Direct to You. We can kind of, you know, first we want to make comparisons that we have the same one. We definitely have identified our failure point. You know, this is solid. This should not pop out. We can even see where the customer was saying he was hearing a noise, because we have an impact here and an impact here. So the control arm was definitely twisting and hitting. So we definitely have identified his noise there. So everything looks good on our control arm, our mounts. For our sway bar, our ball joint, everything looks the same angles. So we know that we're installing the correct part for the vehicle. All right, so this control arm is a little different than most because the way it torques is bushinged in 2 different directions. So this is on a different plane than this one. So when we're putting this in, we want to start with this one. This will be the hardest one to get in because it has to be completely horizontal to make the vertical line. This one here we can just slip and glide in. You know, it's on a pretty easy plane. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this one in and we'll rotate it back, fit this one in, and then this one should just fall right into place. Now that we have it all in and we fought our way through it, what was going on that was making this so hard to do? The reason why we couldn't get it set in to begin with is because the axle right here came out of its joint. So basically it's like a triangle 3 roller bearing kind of deal inside this CV joint. Well, we pulled the bearing from inside out of the joint. And twisted it a little bit so it bound it up and locked it out. So it made this shaft longer. So that's what we were dealing. Okay, so if we could have rewound and gone back, what we did wrong. The steering wheel is locked. We were too lazy to lower the car down on a lift. Yes, too lazy. So we pulled it out. We should have had this wheel unlocked in the steering and turned our wheel to the left. That would have fixed all our problems. We would have not fought with it. We would have got the rotor and everything out of the way. It wouldn't have pulled the joint. So anyway, we got the joint line back up. Everything fell back into place. So that's definitely something you want to keep in mind, that you are pulling on a joint back there. So what we have now is we have our hand tight bolts, hand tight. We have our ball joint. So we'll go ahead and tighten these up. So, we want to we really don't want to tighten it up all the way down. We want to kind of put some load on the suspension to kind of put the arm back, and then we'll go in and tighten and do our torque. So these bolts here are going to be 60 foot-pounds. The control arm bushings, and then the ball joint is going to be 45, somewhere right around there. So that would be those specs there. So we'll go ahead and we've got everything kind of put back together. We got to hunt down another nut, but we'll go ahead and get everything tightened up. All right, so we're going to use a dead man to lift up the suspension so that we can do our final torque while the vehicle would be sitting in the, close to the position. So we're not going to put this on the ball joint. We're going to put it on the control arm. Just want to go right next to it so we can get the socket on. All right, so now we're going to lift the control arm so that we load the suspension, and that'll have the bar and the angle we need it, and that's when we want to do our tightening. That way, if we tightened it hanging down, we could bind our angle up, and that changes, we could create a pull for the vehicle or some other driving scenario. So we'll go ahead and just go ahead and put some tension on it until we see the vehicle start to unload off the lift. All right, so we're starting to get some load. All right, you see that just popped, so everything's settling in. Okay, so we're loaded the suspension up right now. You see our angles are starting to get straight for our control arm. We'll go ahead and we'll get some torque on those. Now we're going to watch this one. Okay, so we want to put our cotter pin in from in to out. All right, and then we'll make sure we got it. Okay. And well, we're close, just a tiny bit. All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and unload the suspension now. Yep. All right, so we'll go ahead and all right, so just the end of it was messed up. Looks like now we're past that point.
Ratchet wrench too big?
Yeah, because we went up in the size nut.
Oh, God. What's the advantage of a castle nut?
So you can put a cotter pin through it. All right.